This video will describe the process of crossbreeding wheat plants to produce new genotypes. It will describe how to choose appropriate plants, how to prepare the male and female parent for cross-pollination, and how to complete pollination. You will need a set of embroidery scissors, fine point forceps, glassine crossing bags, paper clips, a permanent marker, and 75% ethanol. You will also need to identify 2 wheat plants that you wish to cross-pollinate. Before we begin, let's review the anatomy of a wheat plant. Each plant has a primary tiller and can grow secondary and tertiary tillers depending on environment and cultivar. Along each tiller grows multiple leaves, the last one being the flag leaf. From the top of the tiller emerges the spike, which will eventually flower and bear seeds. The spike is made up of multiple spikelets. Florets, which contain the reproductive organs, are flanked by the glumes. Each floret contains both male and female gametes. Here you can see 3 anthers which contain pollen, the male gametes. Between the anthers sits the pistil, with the ovary at the base and the fluffy white stigmas at the top. This is the female reproductive organ. Wheat is a self-pollinating species. If you wish to breed 2 different plants, you must emasculate a spike by removing the anthers, leaving the pistil intact. It is then that you can reliably fertilize the spike with pollen from another plant without the risk of self-fertilization. This ensures your cross is indeed the result of 2 parent plants. Before proceeding with emasculation, you must ensure that there will be a male parent ready to donate viable pollen. Choose a spike with anthers that are beginning to yellow. To access the anthers, use forceps to pry open the 2 translucent bracts. In wheat, maturity begins in the spikelets at the center of the head and works outward. As a guide, the base of the spike should be at the base of the flag leaf. This is a sign that it is slightly more mature than the female and will soon begin to produce pollen. Once you've identified a male parent, bag the spike. Next, choose a plant to use as the female parent on the cross. Then you must find an individual spike at the proper stage to emasculate. Most often, a spike at the proper stage of sexual maturity will still be partially encapsulated by the leaf sheath. Anther maturation rates vary with cultivar and environmental conditions, so it is important to check the spike before continuing. The anthers near the center of the spike must be green, a sign that they are still immature. This spike is at the appropriate stage to be emasculated. On the female spike, remove the underdeveloped spikelets from the top and bottom. These florets are unlikely to produce good seeds. Spikelets will have varying numbers of florets, but cross-pollination only utilizes the outermost florets, since these are more likely to produce the best seeds. With your forceps, locate the middle florets and hold them at the base of the awn. Gently pull down at a 45-degree angle until the inner florets detach from the spike. Continue removing the middle florets from one side of the spike and then rotate the pot to access the opposite side. Do not twist the stem as this injures the plant. Next, gently bend the spike to separate the spikelets. Using your scissors, cut the top half off of every spikelet. Aim for the widest part of the spikelet to expose the anthers. Cutting at the right height is important. You want to gain access to the anthers without injuring the pistil. The next step is to remove the anthers. Because you are working to prevent self-pollination, it is critical that all 3 anthers are removed. Wiggle your forceps between the translucent bracts and open the floret. Gently grasp and pull out the anthers. A common method to verify you have completely emasculated a floret is to deposit the extracted anthers on your hand for counting. If you find less than 3 whole anthers, you must re-examine the floret and remove the remainders. When moving up to the next spikelet, place your thumb on the emasculated spikelet below to help mark your progress. When you have finished, as a precaution, double-check that all of the florets have been emasculated before moving on. Now that the spike has been emasculated, you must cover it with a glassine crossing bag to keep the pistil protected from damage and pollen. Label the crossing bag with the date of emasculation and the plant's ID. To help distinguish between crosses made on the same plant, put a -1 at the end of the ID if it's the first emasculated spike on the plant. If it's the second, put a -2, etc. Because the plant was emasculated while reproductively immature, the pistil is not ready to be pollinated. This spike must be left for 3 days to reach sexual maturity before it can be fertilized. Cross-pollination is most effective in the morning from about 10 to 11 a.m. The plants are not stressed for water and the heat of the day has not reduced the viability of the pollen. Before pollinating, you must verify that the emasculation was successful. Locate your female parent and remove the glassine crossing bag to inspect the spike. Since the ovaries have not been fertilized, the florets will have opened up a bit and the stigmas should look larger. If you see any anthers, the emasculation was incomplete and you will not be able to use this spike for a cross. To minimize exposure of the female spike to open air, rebag the spike between steps to reduce the risk of contamination. Now, you must locate the male parent you selected earlier. Remove the bag to ensure the spike has begun to flower, keeping in mind that the anthers near the center will be more mature. In some cases, the middle spikelets will have exposed white anthers that no longer have pollen, but you may be able to use the less mature anthers farther up and down. Next, if the male has long awns, cut them short. Now, using your thumb and forefinger, stimulate the male and female parent spikes. This will open up the florets to allow better access. Within a few minutes, the male's florets should open to expose some anthers. At this point, you are ready to collect the pollen. Using your forceps, gently extract an anther. Dab the anther on each floret, moving up the spike. Once you reach the top, continue down the opposite side of the spike. Repeat this process 2 or 3 times with new anthers, but be sure to leave at least 1 anther in each floret to ensure the male parent is self-pollinated. Label the male parent's crossing bag with the plant ID and the self-pollinated or selfed symbol. On the female's crossing bag, complete the cross information. Write the male parent's ID and the date of pollination. If permitted by greenhouse arrangement, the spikes should be bagged together for 48 hours to allow continued pollination. With the male positioned above the female spike, flick the bag to promote pollen release. Then, move the female spike around so the opposite side is facing the male spike and flick the bag again. Do this each morning while the spikes are bagged together to increase the chance of pollination. Keep the male parent's bag paperclipped to the stem for this step. Place a pot under a plant that is too short to avoid bending the stems. If you are performing successive pollinations with multiple male parents, it is very important that you sterilize your forceps with 75% ethanol to avoid cross-contamination of pollen. The pollination is now complete and the spikes can be separated and individually bagged. For every cross-pollination that yields an F1 hybrid, you must ensure the continuation of the 2 parental lines. Reserve at least 1 spike for self-pollination on each plant that you will use in a cross. You can use the male parent spike that donated the pollen, but make sure that at least 1 spike of the female plant is left intact to self-pollinate. 4 to 5 days after pollination, the fertilized ovaries will begin to enlarge and become seeds. Count how many seeds have formed, and then write this number on the crossing bag before placing it back on the spike. Best of luck with your cross-pollinations.